Coming up, Jonathan and Todd explore a famous cave with an even more famous cave diver. Welcome to Jonathan Bird's Blue World.
Merritt's Mill Pond in Marianna, Florida is a cave diver's paradise. If it looks like a flooded river, that's because this pond was created by damming up a river to power a mill. The mill is gone, but now it's a reservoir originating at Jackson Blue Spring. The spring discharges a massive amount of groundwater every day from an immense cave system, making it popular with cave divers. Jackson Blue Spring is a first magnitude spring, which means it spits out at least 64 million gallons of water every day, which is enough to keep that entire Merritt's Mill Pond filled with crystal clear water. The Blue World team begins the day carrying our gear from our rental house down to the dock. Cameraman Todd, Zach of all trades, and I are preparing for a fun day on and in the water. Well, there it is. This is awesome. Our own personal boat. I love having this boat. This boat is great. This is great.
Roll stuff right down onto the boat.
You know, on most shoots, we have to rent a van to get around. But for this shoot, we have to rent a boat because all of the dive sites are accessible only from water on this little pond. We begin by assembling our dive gear on the dock, where we have a little more space to work. Today, Cameraman Todd and I are going to be diving with Edd Sorenson, who is a world-famous legend of cave diving. He was Brian K. Cook's instructor, so Brian K. Cook was my instructor. So if I think of Brian K. Cook as like Obi-Wan Kenobi, then Edd Sorenson is Yoda. Once the last of the gear is aboard, it's time to shove off and see how well Zach can drive a boat. I've never been in a situation where I'm on a boat and we have to watch out or we'll hit a tree. These cypress trees are beautiful and they have the Spanish moss on them, but they are in the middle of the pond. So with Captain Zach of all trades at the helm, we head north up the shallow pond towards the dive shop to meet with Edd. Dive shop. You know, it's kind of weird when you pull up to the dive shop in a boat. Zach brings her in like a pro and we tie off to the dock. We meet dive instructor Edd Sorenson, who unfortunately has to watch the dive shop today while Edd goes diving with us. Up the hill, cave adventurers, known around the world as the gateway to the numerous caves of Marianna, Florida. Hey, Edd!
Great to see you.
Great to finally meet you.
So, you ready for some diving?
I am ready.
All right, well, why don't we head over to Jackson Blue and see what crystal clear water looks like?
I can't wait to see it. As soon as we can get Zach away from his new buddy Maverick, we can hit the road. I mean, the water. Back down at the dock, Medi loads Edd's gear onto the boat. Given that it's actually Edd's boat and he knows the way, we figured it would be better for him to drive. On the way further north, Edd tells us about life on the pond in northern Florida.
And we're all thinking the same thing. This sure does seem like a nice place to live. Soon we approach Blue Springs Recreation Area, a state park built around Jackson Blue Spring. Since it's after Labor Day, they're closed for the season, but diving is still allowed. Most people show up in a car and dive from shore, but with a boat, we can tie up and swim in. We'll gear up in the water, and Edd certainly has a casual way of doing it. Finally, it's time to suit up. Todd and I are wearing 7mm wetsuits, but Edd has a dry suit.
Lawn mowing?
Edd moves some of the floating eelgrass to clear a spot. Then we finish gearing up.
All right, so let's recap on what we're gonna do.
Okay.
If we survive the swim over through the weeds.
Much of the pond and the spring is covered with eelgrass beds, swaying in the strong current of water emerging from the spring. All we have to do is swim over it. Edd leads the way around the outside of the spring to avoid the strongest current in the middle. It's like swimming over a field of wheat. Soon we reach the cave entrance. The water blasting out pushes us backwards. It seems like it will be really hard to swim in. But Edd leads the way, entering through a corner section with less current. He points out his reel that he placed for teaching, so we don't need to run our own. We will follow this line to the permanent guideline deep in the cavern zone. The streamlined profile of Edd's kiss rebreather and his expert form makes swimming against the current look easy. Where the entrance narrows, the current becomes quite fierce, but fortunately there are big rocks to grab for help. Past the narrow section, the current drops to a much more manageable level. Inside the cavern zone, we can still see daylight from the entrance. We make slow but steady progress against the flow. I can already tell I'm not going to get very far into this cave before I hit my thirds and need to turn around. Soon we approach the stop sign. Most popular caves have some version of this sign at the back of the cavern zone, warning divers not to go any further unless they're properly trained and equipped. Most cave diving accidents involve divers that lack the proper training and gear. With proper equipment and training, Todd and I follow Edd past the stop sign into the magical world of Jackson Blue. The first big breakdown area is a giant jumble of huge boulders. There are all kinds of little swim-throughs, restrictions, and side passages. Since they're so close to the exit, we can check those out on the way back. For now, we're pushing into the cave so Edd can show us some of his favorite spots. It isn't long until we hit a steep crack going down at a 45-degree angle. An impressive flow pushes up through this narrow crack, but Edd glides right down like it's nothing. I, on the other hand, claw my way down it like a wounded sloth. I blame my camera. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. At 90 feet, Edd takes a left turn, and we jump to a side tunnel known as the Horseshoe Circuit. This is a low tunnel with very little flow that goes around in a big loop and comes back to the main tunnel. Because there isn't much water flow in here, we need to be careful not to kick up any silt. If we do, it will just hang in the water for a long time. But at least we don't have to fight the current. Back-mount divers would have a hard time fitting through this low tunnel, but side-mount divers like us with a lower profile float right through with ease. Soon, Edd approaches a restriction. He vanishes into a hole in the wall and pops out on the other side back in the main section of the cave. It doesn't look too tight, so I squeeze in next. It probably says something about me that I enjoy squeezing through tight sections of cave. Huge fun. Back in the main cave tunnel, we keep going upstream, and the tunnel has gotten quite large. Because it's larger in diameter, the water moves slower, and swimming is a little easier, but we're still swimming upstream, and it's slow going. On the floor of the cave, the sand has formed waves like the bottom of a river, a condition created by the flow of water. In the troughs between the waves, tiny fossils, shells, and pieces of coral from the limestone, which used to be an ancient seabed. The clear water means the guideline is always easy to see. The wavy section of cave floor almost looks like a path leading the way into the darkness. Soon we approach a well-known landmark in the cave, Chicken Head Rock. Does it look like a chicken? Maybe a little. As a couple divers on scooters pass by, we've just about reached our thirds, so this is a good place to turn around and start back. Of course, on the way back, we drift along with the flow, so we go faster with much less effort. Hey everybody, have you subscribed? You know we only put out like one episode a month, so you're not going to get a lot of notifications from us, so just hit the button. When we get back to the steep crack, I go flying up it a lot faster than I came down. Back in the shallows of the big breakdown area, Edd shows us another cool circuit. I watch as he disappears down a very small restriction. It seems to me that I would probably fit down that hole, but I think better of it when I realize I'm not sure how much space there is in there to turn around. So I back up and watch as Edd comes back out. Soon it's time to leave the cave and we make our way back into the cavern zone. We get shot at high speed out of the throat of the narrow section and back up into the main cavern area. We pause for a safety stop with a beautiful view of light rays coming into the cavern and the sway of the eelgrass outside. After our safety stop, we float gently out into the pond and make our way back to the boat.
That was fun. That was super fun. Yeah. Oh, crystal clear.
Jackson Blue Spring is a massive cave system. We went about 700 feet back into a cave that has been mapped more than 5,000 feet from the entrance, containing many miles of passages. Edd Sorenson has been mapping this cave for years, having thousands of dives in this one cave. And now that he's given us an introduction to the cave, we might just do another dive. Stay tuned for part 2 of Jackson Blue. Hey everyone! Have you subscribed to our Extras channel, Blue World Plus? It's full of great behind the scenes and additional fun content. Check it out now!